Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kentucky Valley Educational Co-op. My name is Stephanie Kidd.
And I'm Vonda Adams.
We are going to share with you the Math Child Find tool that we have for interventions. We also have this for SDI. The Math Child Find tool is actually providing you with strategies and resources to address the deficiencies in the areas of math. This instrument is used to be a continuum of interventions for math calculations, reasoning, and also applications. We're going to start by just talking about the tiers here. And as you can see, we have a great graphic that explains our tiers. As tier 1 is whole group. This is everybody gets it. They get it all the time. That's the big thing about tier 1. Tier 1 is that high quality core instruction that every child should get. We should have very high ceiling tasks in that. There should be a lot of breakdown of the complex skills. They should be using the CSA model. Those students in mathematics, it needs to be very, very rigorous. We need to make sure that we're being explicit in our instructions. That's all that tier 1 that we need. So we've got some things down here for your guidelines for math instruction for tier 1. And of course, that learning styles, making sure you've got all the students' learning styles involved. That's another big one for us. So, and then tier 2, when we move into that, you'll see that that changes a little bit because now only a certain percentage of students are getting tier 2. That graphic there talks about how tier 2 is truly 10 to 15% of your students. That's a small percentage, but these students get a lot of information from you in small group. So we're going to look at the group size. We're going to look at the duration that they get that instruction. And that is usually at least twice a week. And then you're going to look at the time, the amount of time that they get it. So in that time, you're looking at about 20 minutes to 30 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week.
Right.
At that point.
And of course, remember that's in addition to that tier 1 as well. We need to make sure that we really emphasize that we're not only are we getting the tier 1, but now we're just layering upon it. And that's the point of that graphic there.
Formative assessment in your tier 1 is so important, so you know what they need to do in tier 2. And so in tier 2, you're going to progress monitor that. Well, we call it progress monitor, or you can call it formative assess. At this point, we're going to really look at how is the instruction I'm giving them changing their understanding, and then how do I change what I'm giving to them to make sure that they're building on that. And then on tier 3, this is where it gets really intense, and we only have 1 to 5% of our population that actually should be in tier 3. And with that percentage, again, we're looking at group size. No more than 2 kids at a time you should be working with, and preferably working with only 1. And of course, the intensity is going to change. Now, you may be doing this 4 to 5 times a week, and you may be doing it for 30 to 40 minutes at a time.
Right.
So at this point, you're going to look at how that changes. Now, does that mean I'm going to be changing the strategy that I'm doing? Probably not. I can use that strategy all the way through. It's just I'm more intense with it. I'm really getting into breaking that down and showing that student how to do those.
Yeah, that student's going to be getting more time with you. And of course, it'll be a one-on-one setting, preferably. So that's what determines whether an intervention is a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, is the frequency, the duration, and the group size.
So that's what it looks like for those.
We decided that we needed to make this a tool that's really usable for our special ed teachers. And we know that with our special ed teachers, whenever the student is referred and we look at the testing of that, we use the WIAT oftentimes in the academic test, and it's broken down into the math calculation and then math reasoning. So that was the purpose in the organization that this tool was in. And of course, we also wanted to address problems or areas of concern in math. So you'll notice that that's going across the top of the screen here. Our problem or concern, that's something that's measurable and observable. It's an objective, and you can see it, you count it, you describe it. And then, of course, we talked about the tiers here. Stephanie already went over all those, the 3 tiers. It's the intervention strategy that must address the discrete skill deficit. And of course, we want to make sure that we note that if interventions are not showing improvement, then change the intervention and look at multiple data points. So it's a lot about monitoring their progress. You can't determine whether a child needs to move tiers unless you're monitoring that progress. And then of course, your evidence that you're delivering those interventions. And then we have a list of student data collections, methods of measurement for you. And we'll look at this more in depth in just a bit. But I wanted to talk about, first of all, how this is set up, not only did like I said, we have math calculation, which is the knowledge and retrieval of mathematical facts, and the application of procedural knowledge in computation. And of course, we broke that down into subcategories, and we just labeled those with the alphabet, A, B, C, D. We tried to just chunk it into areas where we could match it with an intervention strategy. The next area, which was math, reasoning, and application, and we know that typically involves that problem-solving process. And so that's what this one is. And then, of course, there were some areas, some problems and concerns in math that we felt could fall within both areas. So we just put that in as a general area in math. For example, just the difficulty with math vocabulary. We see that in both math calculation and math reasoning. Let's look at a particular problem or area of concern. For example, let's talk about memory problems to recall the steps needed to solve difficult word problems or to solve algebraic equations and to remember what specific symbols mean. Let's say that a child is having that problem. Then over here in this column, we have some suggestions for interventions or resources even. So I want to share with you some of these that we have, and you'll see, of course, if it's blue and underlined, it's hyperlinked, and it'll take you to a site where you can actually get some of those resources. So let's look at these worked examples. You can see that when I click on that, that's actually a training that Stephanie and I provided for our teachers here at KBEC that you could actually watch and get an idea of what worked examples are, and it would be an excellent way to work with a child that's having difficulty in that area. And then also up here, we have visual organizers, and this is a really great site to go to. And you see that it gives you all kinds of models that you can
download for free.
Download for free, yes. It's really great. Just awesome suggestions, and the step-by-step goes right along with that. Work examples. Ideas.
Also, if you're worried about if these are actually evidence-based, well, if they've got the little parentheses out from it, those are Hattie's effect size, and that is the effect size that it has on the instruction for the student.
Yes, and of course, if you're not familiar with Hattie effect size, then we actually have that linked here as well, that you can go to this link here, and it will provide you with definitions of what he means by those. It has it ranked from the most effective to the least effective. Basically, a rule of thumb, if it's 0.4 or higher, then it's an intervention that would be effective. Anything less than 0.4 would not be quite as effective. It would not probably be something that you would want to work with a child in either of these tiers. Once you provide that intervention, then you can document it in your lesson plans. It can be documented with anecdotal notes or records. Document that you provided that service for that child. And of course, always monitoring that progress. In this column for student data collection, we also have several sites that are linked here. You have the Easy CVM that many of you may be familiar with. That's a good way to document and monitor progress. And then, of course, one that we're very fond of is the Commit Screener, which is now published through Forefront. And it is an awesome resource for you to give for screeners. It actually has a fall screener, a mid-year screener, and a spring screener for you. So you can really monitor progress over time for your kiddos.
Okay, in our resource page, what we did was we looked at different areas. And so you'll see in the red, like we've got additional resources. These are basically just some information about math that you can go to. Kentucky A-BRI also has some things for SEL in it, and that's linking that SEL back to mathematics. Intervention Central too, there's free resources on there that you might want to look. If you're looking at processing and planning your RTI, these are some really good sites. The Georgia Numeracy Project, and in that site, you will find multiple little games and activities that you can play with that student and progress monitor off of those. And so if you go on in here, you'll see, like I said, this is awesome websites that you can go into if you're trying to just plan your RTI. What am I going to do next? And then if we go down here to screeners, you can get those very similar materials. Of course, activities, games, and those kind of things. These are just different ones that you can get. This toolkit down here is a great one.
Let's talk about the Kentucky Numeracy Project here, though. This one is actually, of course, is our own numeracy project here in Kentucky. It is an awesome resource for you. This actually, you can search by standards and find activities for your students. So be sure and check that out. It's also, of course, free. It's great for station work. And obviously, in this case, it's great for intervention work.
Especially those small groups, those individuals. There's a lot of good things that can come from the KMP site for that. Social emotional learning is going to be a big thing. So KDE has developed a great thing for that. Then of course, LD and mathematics, to look at your standards, it helps to break it down. It looks at the, any student that's struggling in mathematics, you can find a place in there to go and do the next steps for. And then of course, IEP and lesson plan development handbook that we have. It's on the KDE site too. This contains documents to help you to develop and create individualized educational programs that student's going on path. And then of course, articles. One that you may want to look at is assisting students struggling in mathematics. This response to intervention for elementary and middle school. There's a lot of good suggestions in that.